My first true resort client, back when I had no reputation, no case studies, no real experience shooting resorts, paid me $5,000. And to be honest, I didn't think making $5,000 in the span of 4 days was even in the realm of possibilities. And I'll get more into the specifics of exactly what I offered the brand later in this video, but I will tell you that they paid me for one very specific thing. And it wasn't for videos or photos, even though that was part of the deliverables. They paid me for a very specific result. And this one thing is the most important thing that you need to focus on if you want to start attracting more high value, high paying clients for your content business. Now, just so you don't think that this is a fluke or a one-time thing, I've been doing this for a while, but I recently helped my creator client Cynthia land a $50,000 photo project. And she used the exact tactics I'm about to show you in this video to pitch and land a significantly larger deal than she had ever pitched in her entire life. Now, you probably would never guess it by looking at that testimonial I just showed you, but when I first started working with Cynthia, she was actually pretty confused in terms of what to offer, how to get in front of her ideal clients, and most importantly, how to actually close them for high ticket rates. And it wasn't until she started implementing the 4 steps I'm about to show you in this video that she was able to not only close the biggest deal of her life, but also feel extremely confident doing so. Now, before I get into the 4 steps, I just want to clarify that the rate a brand is willing to pay you is 100% determined by your value to that brand. And I know the word value kind of gets tossed out, it's kind of generic, so I just want to clarify exactly what I mean by value. Value is not the amount that you charge per hour, or how many photos you deliver, or how nice your website is, or if you have the newest Canva template for a media kit. All that stuff doesn't really matter. Value is just simply the transformation you're offering a client and how much they actually value that transformation coming true. So that's why some people like Cynthia can charge 50 grand for a photo project while others struggle to charge $500. It's maybe similar deliverables, same amount of time spent, but very different value. And I'd be willing to bet that the brand that's investing $50,000 into a photo project probably going to get a significantly higher ROI than the one investing $500. So when you start to think about pricing this way, your mindset shifts from how could I possibly convince someone to pay me 50 grand to what can I offer the brand that would be the highest value to them, that they would actually be willing to pay me that amount. And that minor reframe in your mindset is going to completely shift how you approach your business and also just how you approach clients in general. Because at the end of the day, brands are ultimately buying a product. They're not buying you. So you have to make that transformation that you're selling them as clear as humanly possible. So just as an example, if you're a product photographer, a bad example of displaying your value to a brand would be like, hey, I can shoot some photos for you to throw up on your website. Now, the reason this is so bad is because the value you're giving them is just basically photos for their website, right? There's no real tangible result that they can get out of that. Now, a better way to just reframe that value of probably the same deliverables would be, hey, I can help you elevate your brand presence. I can help you increase your website conversion rate, or maybe even optimize your ad spend so that you can get more out of each dollar that you spend on ads and ultimately increase your revenue. So hopefully you can start to see the difference there, where the first example, the value is just photos, right? Where the second example is actually an increase in website conversion rates that leads to an increase in revenue. Cool. So now that we know the value that we're bringing the brand, how do we transition that into something tangible that we can actually sell to them? So whenever you create an offer, you've got to start with the end result in mind. Like, what is the brand actually looking to achieve by hiring you? Because chances are they're not going to pay you thousands of dollars for a nice looking video just because it looks pretty, right? They're paying you for a video because they want what that video will offer the brand. So the question is, what is the end result that the brand is after? How long will it realistically take them to get there? And what steps are involved to get them from where they're at now to where they want to go? And literally create a timeline. Step like 1, 2, 3, 4, starting at when they sign the contract to when they get the result that they're actually after. What does that look like in terms of a timeline for the client? And what you end up coming up with in terms of a timeline of a step-by-step process is ultimately what you end up selling to the brand as a package. So that's why the first step to actually attracting high value clients is to create something they actually want and get real clear on what you're really selling. So what I realized with my first resort client was that I wasn't actually selling them a video. What I was selling them was an evergreen billboard that would play throughout all of their in-room TVs and promote specific new amenities that they had, which ultimately would make more people book those amenities, which increases their average customer value. So now, instead of someone just booking a stay at the hotel and maybe going to the restaurant once or twice, now they're aware of different excursions, spas, different things that the resort has to offer, and it increases the amount of money the person will spend at the resort, which ultimately increases the revenue of the resort as a whole. So now that we know exactly what we're selling and why it's valuable to the brand, then all we have to do is just explain that to them and they should write us a blank check, right? Well, not so fast, because if you don't have step 2 in place, then you're going to have a very difficult time actually closing these clients. So I remember when I first was getting started with my business, I was super focused on how I was going to hard sell clients or how I was going to convince them to work with me or whatever it might be. And I realized that I was
way more focused on the clients that didn't want to work with me than I was on the ones that actually needed what my content could do for them, right? Like they actually needed the transformation.
And to be honest, it took me a while to get over this negative belief system of no one wanted to work with me because I was constantly getting rejected. Like my first 100 emails I sent, I either got no response or, the classic, we're not interested. And the first 27 sales calls I took was I didn't make $1 off of. I didn't close a single one of those. So I had a lot of reason to just be like, whatever, no one wants to hire me, brands don't pay, whatever it is, right? But ultimately I chose to shift that belief because I came to this realization that I have two options. The first is that I could continue being a victim, continue feeling sorry for myself, and, have justification for why it's not working, why brands didn't want to hire me, whatever, but eventually end up in a situation where I'd have to get a different job to pay my bills because I can't just, live for free. Unfortunately, that's not how the world works, right? So that was the first option, and that wasn't an option for me because I knew I wanted to do this full time. So the only other option I had was to just take ownership, figure out how to do it, and understand that I actually can make this a full-time living because there's tons of proof of other people doing this, so why could not? And what really kind of solidified that thought process for me is realizing how attainable it actually is. So I just thought of the end goal, like what would be something crazy that if I hit this, that would be like the dream for me, right? And I was like, if I could make $100,000 a year with my content business, then that would be like the dream, right? And I started breaking it down. What does that actually look like? So to make $100,000 a year, that means I would only have to sell 20 people a $5,000 project, which is essentially like 1 to 2 a month total. I wouldn't even have to sell 2 people a month on a $5,000 project. Sounds good, right? Or even better yet, I could just sell 3 clients a $3,000 a month retainer that lasts for 12 months. So at that point, I was like, okay, if I only need 3 people to pay me $3,000 a month for the entire year, and there is literally millions of brands in the entire world, it's very unreasonable for me to assume that I can't get at least 3 of them to pay me $3,000. Like, that's totally doable. And that's why the second thing that you really need to narrow in on in order to attract these high value clients is understanding exactly who needs what you have to offer. And this was honestly a huge game changer for me because for the longest time, I was trying to convince clients why they needed to work with me. So my outreach emails, that's what was getting ignored, right? Or on my sales calls, I would try to hard close or try to convince them and give them all these stats and whatnot in terms of why they should work with me, when in reality, I should have just been the solution that clients are actually already looking for. So we just talked about creating an offer for brands that would actually create a transformation. So now we just need to identify who are those brands that would benefit the most from the transformation we're offering. And this client really needs to have 2 characteristics. The first is that they need to want the transformation that you're actually selling, or ideally the transformation is an absolute need for them. And the second thing is that they have to actually have the financial resources to invest in it. And this is where a lot of creators unfortunately go wrong, because maybe you see a brand or a resort or whatever it is that you want to work with, and you try to pitch them on something that's not actually an active need. They're not really in the market for it. So when you pitch them, it either gets ignored or ghosted, or maybe sometimes you get a free exchange because it's not a need and the client doesn't need the transformation that you're actually offering, right? So it's more of just kind of a nice to have as opposed to we absolutely need this. Now on the flip side, you might also be pitching a client that absolutely needs the transformation that you're offering, but they just genuinely don't have the money. And in this case, even though they need the transformation you're offering, it's not ethical to sell them. Because honestly, the last thing you want is for the client to be stressing about money and how they're going to pay their bills next month, because you want them to be focused and excited on the transformation and the process to get that transformation versus stressing about how they're paying their bills and then therefore putting that stress onto you as well. Cool. So now that we know the characteristics of who we're selling to and also what we're selling them, it becomes so much easier to make ads, outreach emails, content, or anything else that you do to get in front of these people because you know exactly who you're talking to instead of just throwing out a wide net and hopefully catching someone. Instead, you're actually looking for the brands that are looking for you. Okay, so now that we know who would hire us, there's still this blaring issue, which is why would they hire you specifically? So again, if our goal is to appeal to the brands that actually need us, what beliefs do these brands have to have in order to move forward with hiring you? So let's go over it. So they need to have the belief that there's actually a problem. They also need to have the belief that they need to fix the problem. And thirdly, they need to have the belief, or at least the budget available to invest in fixing that problem. Now, why would they actually specifically hire you? Well, I know if I was the person that was making a hiring decision, I would definitely want to make sure whoever I was hiring actually knows what they're talking about. Now, there's a bunch of ways you can go about this. You can show case studies, testimonials, previous client results. You can even show content that you created for previous campaigns. But if you just absolutely don't have any of that stuff, which I would recommend you do, but if you don't, you can actually still establish yourself as an authority by talking about your unique process. So what is your unique process for getting your specific clientele results that's different than maybe some of the other people on the market? So to bring this home, let me just give you an example of what maybe a generic process would look like that you probably seen, maybe you've even pitched it yourself. So a generic process would be something like, oh, we'll create some reels to help you go viral on Instagram. Now, to be honest, nothing about that shows that you have any kind of expertise in creating videos that go viral or creating an entire sales process for a brand to help them achieve their end goal, because most brands, their end goal is not to go viral. That's just like a means to an end, right? So that doesn't really show any kind of expertise. So to contrast that, I'll give you an example of what my personal process looks like for my content agency so you can have an idea of how to actually explain that value. So I present something that's called the Social Accelerator Program. And basically what it is it helps resorts become the destination in the minds of their prospects before they ever step foot on the resort. And we do that through 3 very specific content pillars. The first is attention-grabbing content, which is designed specifically to get in front of as many people as humanly possible by leveraging trends, stuff like that, and also being highly shareable so you can get in front of as many people as possible, essentially for free. The second pillar of content is educational, so that people can experience every little aspect of your resort and really envision themselves enjoying every aspect before they ever step foot. Also helps with doing upsells like, amenities, stuff like that. And the third is branding, which really sets you apart and solidifies you in your prospect's mind as being the destination that they cannot wait to have their vacation at. And it's by implementing these 3 content pillars that we make you and your resort the destination that the prospect cannot wait to go to for their next vacation. So hopefully you see the difference there. Because I explained the entire process, it just sounds like I know way more of what I'm talking about than someone who says, hey, I can make you some viral reels. So now just step back and ask yourself the question, what would a prospect need to know in order to want to work with me specifically? And just list out as many questions as you possibly can, find the answers to those, and that's going to become your unique selling process. Cool. So up until now, we've really focused on the back-end work of creating something that a client would actually want to pay you for, but we still have a problem. They don't know you exist. And here's where I personally went really wrong. So I had this thought that if I just post a bunch on social media, grow a following, all that kind of stuff, eventually brands will just slide in my DM and want to pay me thousands of dollars. Instead, get even further, I thought that the more followers I had, the more I would get paid. And I spent the better part of 3 years building my account to where it's at now. But if I'm honest with you, most of the big jobs that I've ever gotten was because I made personal connections that was not through my social media accounts. So this idea that you just post more and grow a following and never have to do the work of actually getting in front of your clients, learning how to sell, actually creating something of value is just fundamentally wrong, because you can't just wait for brands to come to you. Now, to be clear, I did eventually figure out how to get inbound leads, and I get inbound leads today, but the keyword there is eventually. I don't know about you, but I don't have years to just wait around hoping that a brand eventually maybe hires me, right? So I needed to have something that allowed me to get in front of my target client consistently with the right messaging. And one of my absolute favorite ways to do this is with a process I call precision prospecting. So basically this allows you to get in front of your target clients on a consistent basis so you can have more conversations with them, so you can close more clients and ultimately actually charge more money per client. And the best part is you can actually start implementing it today and see results in as soon as 24 hours from now. So if you want to see the exact breakdown of how you can implement that for yourself, check out this video here, and I'll see you in that video.